Hey everyone, time to kick off another exciting session off Office Hours. Today is April 5th, 2023. My name's Eric Osterman and I'll be your host today. Cloud Posse is the DevOps accelerator you need. We empower companies to conquer AWS using our rock-solid Terraform blueprints. We're so confident in our results, we offer a money-back guarantee. Whether you're starting from scratch or just not happy with your current setup, head to cloudposse.com/quiz to book a session with me directly, and I'll show you what your AWS future can look like. If you're new here, don't worry, our format's super informal. My main goal is to answer your questions. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source modules, tools, etc., this is a great place to ask. For those of us joining us through our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week, so don't miss out. Our call today is recorded. We'll be posting a recording of the session to our YouTube channel. So if you want to help support what we do over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. And with that said, let's get started here with some announcements. So the first one is one of the platforms we recommend to a lot of customers is Spacelift. It's a Terraform cloud alternative similar to M0, Scalar, Terraform Cloud, and Terraform Enterprise, and 25 other Taco alternatives. So what's cool about this is Spacelift has introduced now an option for self-hosted like dashboard, like the actual platform itself. Previously, you could only do self-hosted runners, kind of like Terraform Cloud agents. Well, now Terraform or Spacelift self-hosted is more like Terraform Enterprise, which you can self-host now. This is a good thing for companies that have a requirement that certain critical pieces of their infrastructure be self-hosted. I guess it also means you can now get it in GovCloud. Looks like it is, I haven't looked too deeply, but it looks like it's available then through the AWS Marketplace using CloudFormation. Anyone kicked the tires on this already? Hey, Alex Atkinson, I know you are a big M0 user. Does M0 offer self-hosted as well now?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
It wouldn't take too much for them to ship that product though. And they're pretty fast moving internally.
Yeah.
And I've seen them react to changes from their competitors. So it wouldn't surprise me if they have an answer to this pretty quick.
Yeah, it's a pretty competitive landscape. Okay. Next announcement was something I've seen in like 20 different channels and groups I'm in is Amazon has announced support in the AWS Service Catalog for deploying Terraform open source. Now they provide an example here at the bottom, but I haven't had a chance to, oh, that's not the one I was thinking of. I think I added a link here. So there's an example repo on GitHub to follow, but I didn't quite follow. I've never used Service Catalog itself, so I was wondering if anyone else could, fill in the gaps and give a high-level explanation of how it works. If not, that's okay.
I haven't used that yet. That's news to me. But I use Service Catalog with the control tower, and basically the Service Catalog allows you to basically facilitate like self-service environments where you can actually write out your templates and your end users in the company can use it to deploy a known blueprint. But so far, all of that has had to be done in CloudFormation. They're now allowing us to do it. Terraform, that's a big.
Yeah, but from what I see, it is a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
Like what I don't like is that, my fear is this is what it was doing, and more and more it looks like it is. So here's that safely replaces a couple EC2 instances. And if you're going to have to start having a whole bunch of wrapper scripts and maintain all of this code to deploy something that way, sounds like, well, to be optimistic, it means it's very flexible. It means that you as a business can implement however you want that to work. But it's not like a standard Terraform way of doing it, it sounds like. So
yeah, it sounds like, yeah, that's what it seems like from looking at what
especially
you're
if
showing there.
like in this example, they're even committing the artifacts of some of these things, like the S3 bucket. I forget where I saw that.
Yeah, that's the same thing with cloud, with Control Tower, be able to use Terraform. It's a bunch of Lambda serverless functions and state engines and stuff like that to get it to work.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that too. And it is, I find it interesting that companies can use that. Amazon's, what was it, account factories for Terraform. It's not like you get to review the plan before making any changes to any of that stuff. And it's, using code build and code pipeline to orchestrate all those changes. As an engineer, I would be terrified to make changes to any of that stuff once it's up and running. All right, next announcement was from GitHub. There's been a lot of talk lately about SBOMs, the software bill of materials. Lots of vendors are requiring them. Lots of open source tools have come out. Perhaps it's related to the precedent set by, as they say here, this executive order. GitHub now supports that natively, and it's implemented as easily as basically downloading the tarball. You go to your dependency graph under Insights, Dependency Graph, and you can click this button here, Export SBOM, and it'll include the appropriate format for all those dependencies. Also cool, well, in this case, it picks it up for like dependencies on GitHub Actions. This is a Terraform module by Cloud Posse with some Terra tests. So then it picks up all the dependencies inside of Terra tests. And let's see here. It does not seem to pick up any other dependencies right now on Terraform modules, which would be included in here. So
can you touch quickly on what SBOM is?
Someone else could probably do a better job explaining it, but the idea is that you are transparent about all the dependencies in your project so that it can be used for vulnerability reporting and cataloging in an easier manner.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Perhaps somebody knows. Does package log files like you get with node count? At least if not in spirit, the letter of the executive order? Does anybody know the answer to that?
SBOMs are very well defined in how they're delivered, how you digest them. There are tools, an entire ecosystem around how you form them, deliver them, and ingest them. For example, if you have HIPAA requirements or any kinds of compliance requirements, it may pay for you to look at your integration points, whether they're SaaS vendors or silent partners, whatever they might be. You can look at their SBOM and say, hey, we see you have a known vulnerability here, please fix that. Or we can, like, until it's fixed, we may not be able to use that endpoint, things like that. It's just a little bit of strategic enablement around mitigating those types of risks from third parties.
Yeah. This terrifies me. We are increasingly getting some folks asking for our SBOM, which has thousands of dependencies in it. Having a customer be able to call us at any time and say, we see in your blah 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 feature that there's a regex DOS opportunity that's we want you to fix that. We could spend 100% or more of our engineering time responding to those type of requests if consuming SBOMs became
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
It became commonplace. This is a horror show.
But a big part of this is trying to help people who may be overreacting or overreaching in their response to this, helping them understand how they should be behaving with this new capability. And don't make your SBOMs public, and make them available to the people you integrate with. And if you have B2B customers, maybe they get them. Like, make those decisions. Be a little bit careful about your exposure on this stuff, because as much as it's valuable to say, hey, I work with this third party and this is their SBOM and it has all these issues, you know, there's a difference between they haven't made any updates for 5 years and there's a thing, they've got a vulnerability that just came out, maybe they're still patching it, right?
Yeah.
And the other side of that is, if you make this widely available to the whole planet, it's just a cookbook for how to attack you. So don't make them public.
The other thing to think about that as well is not sometimes the use case of tools or libraries, they may not be a factor in your environment as well. Because we've had a couple of cases where we've had vulnerabilities found against packages, and doing the research and looking into it, found out that it wasn't something that actually affected us. Yes, we wanted to get it fixed, but it wasn't as critical as it was made out to be, because it wasn't a factor. It wasn't possible. So just having that information is one thing, but how it affects you is abusable in your environment.
Is it just me? Is Jeremy's connection breaking up?
No, it's breaking up.
Okay, just a heads up, Jeremy. We caught.
But no, I absolutely get what you're saying. Whether or not there's a vulnerability and whether or not somebody can gain access to an area, like to have the access to execute on that vulnerability, is two different things. Is the vulnerability, you know, in your private VPC, or is it at the edge of your architecture? Things to consider.
Well, you must deal with very gentle GRC teams if they will allow your attestation that it doesn't affect you to change anything. The people we deal with are intense, and they will want you to stop producing additional releases until every critical or high vulnerability is resolved, even if there's no chance that that's an exercise vulnerability.
Wow.
I, for one, am not, I would no more give away my SBOM than I would give away the full details of a penetration test. It's bad OPSEC.
Exactly.
I would agree with that. All right. Other announcement was Amazon's AWS Lattice, which was the most exciting announcement for me to come out of AWS reInvent last year. This is Amazon's overlay network, a response, you could say, to the proliferation of service meshes out there. I'm really excited about this, and some people are frustrated it took this long. I'm pretty surprised it came out this quickly for such a significant service. The other thing is that while Terraform support is not yet available, this has been active in the past day. Just it was open 5 days ago, and a couple PRs have already been open to address these missing resources then to support it. 2 have been merged, and 4 are pending. Anyone else excited about Lattice, or have been kicking the tires on it?
Definitely interested. Still kind of gathering information though.
Yeah. I'm really hoping this could simplify some of the network architectures we deploy. We rely heavily today on deploying VPC, AWS transit gateways, so that our automation, like GitHub Action runners, can communicate to services in the different accounts. But it's a pretty heavy-handed approach just to be able to connect to a database to deploy a whole transit gateway. So Oh, and Vlad also mentions they've launched the Kubernetes gateway for Lattice. So that actually is even more ideal in our situation. So services can automatically, I assume, then connect or register themselves on the Lattice network.
Hmm.
The other use case for us would be like exposing various RDS databases on a Lattice network so that the GitHub action runners can run their migrations against those databases without needing to use a transit gateway.
That'd be a neat way to connect all the databases for a given organization through a single unified endpoint.
Yeah. I'm so tired of sidecars for everything you need to deploy.
Yeah.
All right, next announcement is, this is one near and dear to my heart. Anyone using Atmos? Atmos is our workflow automation tool with specific workflows for Terraform. We have this huge library of Terraform components, which are root modules. That we are diligently keeping up to date and contributing to regularly. This is how we do infrastructure at Cloud Posse. So if anything, it's a great insight into how that works. So what this announcement is that we've implemented a GitHub action to update the components in your infrastructure based on their component YAML file. So for example, in Infrastructure Live, with Cloud Posse's infra repo, our components are vendored into a repository like the S3 bucket component here. And then that will have a component YAML, which specifies the source of that component. We vendor all the components into a repo because when you have references all over the place to URLs around the internet, it's really hard to understand what is going on. And you certainly can't just search a repository for something. So vendoring it in is the best of both worlds. If you need to diverge, if you need to change the behavior for your business, you're not blocked by this upstream provider of some functionality like Cloud Posse. You can still make those changes locally. But if you want to stay, on the main line with what we have, we make that real easy for you. So with this GitHub action that we implemented, the Atmos component updater, you drop a little GitHub action workflow into your infrastructure repository, and you can specify which components you want to include, which ones you want to exclude. By default, we include everything and exclude nothing. And it will open a PR on the cron schedule of your GitHub action and open a maximum of, say, 5 PRs at a time, so you don't DOS attack yourself with pull requests, and update those to the latest version of a component that has changed. So if there was no change between the two commits, the version you're using and the version we have upstream, it's not going to create a pull request. This is a great way to stay current on your Cloud Posse reference architectures, whether you're a customer or just a open source enthusiast. Any questions on this new GitHub action? All right. Oh, one other thing. If you combine this then with maybe your existing GitHub actions to plan and apply Terraform, or if you combine this with Spacelift or M0, whatever else you're using for infrastructure, this is cool because you get this PR that's automatically updating your infrastructure, and then you just look at your CI for Terraform and see if it's passing or failing. Ideally, there's no changes, so you can upgrade to the latest version and know that there was no change in the plan, incorporating any bug fixes and so forth along the way.
This is quite excellent. You just gave me a new to-do.
Please do kick the tires, help give us any feedback. If there's anything you'd like to see added or work differently, let us know.
This is exactly how I like to work. Smarter, not harder.
Yeah, actually, I guess one thing I could show you is here's an example of what it looks like in action. Oops. I'm gonna go here. So this is the repo we've been using to develop it in. So there's more PRs in here than recommended. It's also here just to demonstrate or prove out how it works. So if you open up one of these components, it shows you the version you are running, the latest version here, and the release note, link to the GitHub release notes, the component updated. For your team, it's giving you some context of why you want to be updating and some recommendations of what to do if you see breaking changes or so forth. In the future, we can probably make this parameterized so you can make custom PR templates. Right now, that's static. All right. Next announcement is a couple things that I snagged from the weekly TF newsletter. This was a small little utility for Terraform. It's a way to clean up your unused variables in Terraform. Sometimes, you add or remove functionality, but the supporting variables are left in, which clutters it. So it's a little Go utility for that. And similarly, if you're doing cleanup of your Terraform code, one of the other things is you might want to, oh, I think I reversed those announcements. So this one here was to sort your variables. This one here was to clean up your variables. So if you have unused variables, Terraform Cleaner will remove those. And this one here, TF sort, will help you organize those in a lexicographical order. And then last one, this was a collection of Rennovatebot Configs from one of our customers. I was also incidentally in the weekly TF newsletter. I was excited to see, so I thought I'd promote it here. If you're not using Rennovatebot, it's a great way to keep your infrastructure or projects up to date. It's similar to Dependabot, but what's cool about Rennovatebot is that you can come up with a lot of custom rules like these here. Basically, if you have a config file and you can write a regex to match versions inside of that config file, and you can match those versions to releases on GitHub, you have now a way to automatically update your custom formats of config files based on changes.
Will this work for boilerplate code? Like if I have a particular pattern of code that needs updating?
Oh, it's not for I mean, you could have it like if you have hard coded versions in that boilerplate code or in that code, you could have it updated. But this is not a way to update, I don't believe, like code blocks in any kind of way. Like actual code.
So, and I think I've wanted this before. So Dependabot will look at Docker files. This can look at any arbitrary YAML file. Can this do that? For this tag, for example, if I have it in some custom config file that I created.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. They have first of all, it pretty much supports every format that Dependabot does and then some. Now this is more like a market page. It's hard for me to navigate, unfortunately. Rennovatebot docs. Here we go. Better without marketing.
So before I look at this on the same note, is there anything catered to Helm values files? Image tags?
That's a good question. Helm values, I don't think there could be because Helm values are arbitrary YAML, but this would be exactly what you would use to update those. Let's see, I might even have, I'm going to see if I have an example here handy. Yeah, here's one that Cloud Posse was working on. And we attempted a few different approaches. I'll be honest, we're not actively using this or promoting it, but this is how I honestly wish Rennovatebot worked out of the box, or Dependabot, so that what you could do is instead of having to come up with a way to parse every single way that versions could be defined in all these different files, instead come up with a like a rich comment that you could add. So in this case, hey, this is a Terraform version 1.0.4. It's defined as an argument inside of our Docker file. Hey, the data source is GitHub releases. Find the latest version here. Actually, I think this was a copy paste mistake here. This should say Docker and Docker, whatever, to get the, data source should be like HashiCorp Terraform here in this case, to be clear. But the idea is then that it would match the subsequent version here and replace it with whatever that source was.
Nice. And
So,
then it can open GitHub pull requests for that as well.
exactly, can open up. So to be honest, we were originally planning on doing this for our component.yaml, and that would have been fine. But we wanted to make it a little bit smarter, so we decided to write our own GitHub action to do the same thing. Among other things, we wanted ours to support different sources other than GitHub, and we also wanted to be able to vendor in the actual Terraform code itself by calling some Atmos commands. And that would have been difficult to achieve with just Rennovatebot. But for other purposes, this is fine.
Yeah, updating the tag on the ECS task in my Atmos config was another time I wanted this.
Yep. All right.
So I just wanted to kind of mention, I dropped something in random, but the reason I asked about boilerplate code and stuff like that is because I was thinking about a Java refactoring framework called Astra. And what Astra does is it compiles Java into, abstract syntax tree, and then allows you to address that abstract syntax tree so you can programmatically refactor Java. So I don't think there's anything like that for any other language, but that's what I was thinking of when I was asking about Renovate. I was wondering if they were expanding into that territory, but it seems not.
One second, guys, I gotta go turn off an alarm downstairs. If you guys can keep yourselves company for a moment. Are you turning off the alarm? Okay, thanks.
On the topic of parsing things like HCL, has anybody tried using the Python library for that? I think it was I was looking at that a little while ago.
I know there's a Go library for that. And I looked at it, but I haven't used it in Anger.
You haven't used it in anger? Is that an expression? I don't know.
Oh, I love that expression.
Yeah, it means I haven't used it like for production or for, in any
Really?
I used it for real.
Yeah, never for real, just for play.
Funny. All right. That's all the announcements I have today. In full transparency, I didn't have a chance to check the AWS announcements. I'm sure there was maybe something there. Anything I missed?
Did you go over M1 support last week?
Not in too much detail. But since you're here, Jeremy, why don't you talk about what we've been doing on that? Also, you've done a lot. We did announce that there's a M1 support now in Geodesic, but at that time we hadn't updated the build system for ARM packages. You've done that now, so maybe you want to talk about some of the work you're doing on that, Jeremy.
Sure. Well, not much to say. It's just that we maintain a packages repo that has Alpine, Debian, and RPM packages of tools that we find useful and are not already packaged. And we've now we're now building, we used to only build AMD 64, Intel packages. And now for Debian and RPM, we're also building ARM 64 packages. And we also have a make-based installer for the Mac, which will also support M1 packages. Try to install it. The Apple make-based installer doesn't have good error messages when there isn't an M1 native package available, but other than that, it's working pretty well.
Yeah.
Most of them have that was available now, and the part of the motivation for this was that we use this heavily in building Geodesic, and so with this enabled, I now have a native ARM builds of Geodesic to distribute. Which
Initial reports is that it's much faster. So you don't have to use emulation anymore. If you're relying on Geodesic, you can just use the native ARM images.
And one interesting thing I found was that you can run the Darwin ARM 64 Docker image on an Intel Mac under emulation, and it will report that it's running an ARM chip. But in that configuration, it will run Intel binaries without complaint. Whereas if you're running it directly on an Apple M1, it would not run those binaries.
So that's interesting. It just transparently lets you run both ARM and AMD binaries inside of Docker on AMD.
Yeah, it probably works the other way around. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Well, but I think what happens is, since you're already running it in the emulator recognizes this doesn't need emulation and just lets it go through. In any case, that's why there were some mistakes in getting things published. We were running the checks on an Intel machine, and some of them passed with the thinking we had ARM binaries, but actually had being downloaded for various reasons. So it was a little bit of shakiness there, but I think we've got it all sorted out now.
All right. Well, thanks for leading the charge on that journey.
You're welcome, and I hope you all enjoy the extra time you now have.
All right. So then we're moving on to Q&A. We had a couple questions. Taylor, let's see here. Taylor, are you on the channel on the session today here?
Yeah, I am.
Awesome. So I don't have any answers on this, but I'll read your questions and we'll see if anyone else does. Let me just pull it up here. So it's visible for everyone. All right. So Taylor, you're asking a question related to Elastic. You're setting up Elasticsearch Kibana, which will be mainly ingesting time-based data via FileBeat, MetricBeat in EKS clusters. This new stack will replace an older legacy Elastic stack, version 7.9. This is a self-hosted stack deployed as a series of AWS autoscale groups. The legacy stack's only configured to use the hot tier. I'd like to set up index lifecycle management, ILM, for the new stack to leverage hot, warm, cold tiers. So a few questions. One is, do you have any recommendations on example index lifecycle management policies that we should start with? And what instance types or other resources would you recommend for each data tier? Anyone an Elastic expert or have some recommendations on these topics?
I'm not an Elastic expert, but something that kind of stands out for me is the use of ASGs. whenever I resize clusters, the performance takes a huge hit as the cluster reshards. How are you planning on managing that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I plan on testing with this new cluster is simulating various types of failures and just seeing how it deals with that. I think as of right now, we basically just have a cluster that's not being scaled much. And like I said, it's all using, it's all just on the hot tier. So I think it'll be something that we're still going to test to see if that approach is something that works. This was something that was kind of just handed to me as I'm starting with this newer company. And the main goal of this project was to just upgrade from 7.9 to 8.6, but we're also adding some additional things to the AMIs for security. So there's some unknowns around that side of things. But as far as I know, the goal of the self-hosted approach is to save money versus using, Amazon's Elasticsearch or another cloud provider's managed service. So I don't think we're set in stone in terms of that, but if there's a recommendation that you have, I would definitely be open.
Am I correct in saying that Elastic now supports using S3 as a backend as opposed to EBS?
So Elastic does support using S3 as a snapshot repository, and if you enable the snapshots to be searchable, then that is a form of a data tier. So I've seen that where people use S3 with searchable snapshots as a cold data tier.
This is I'm definitely not an expert in Elastic, but something of in a POC that I had been running was moving it and running it inside the Kubernetes cluster itself, and using different storage classes for the hot and cold tiers.
That is true. And those are actually an Elastic operator, right, for Kubernetes?
Correct. It's an operator that deploys all of it out there. The Kibana, the file beat, the metrics beat, all of that is able to be handled by the operator and have multiple instances of it.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Taylor, I'm curious, are you guys a Kubernetes shop otherwise or not yet?
Yeah, no, we use Kubernetes for most everything. This is just one of those things that somebody else had worked on prior to me coming, and they went this approach. I would have absolutely gone the Kubernetes approach, and now it's kind of one of those things where my boss just wants to push forward with it instead of starting over.
Okay. So you're basically going to give it some TLC and bring it up to current standards and then move on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I understand these questions, may take a little bit more time to answer, but it just seems like I haven't been able to find any great examples of ILM index lifecycle policies that are out there. Obviously, it depends a lot on like how frequently your data is accessed and all those types of things.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, you can also just do the lifecycle management in the application, right? I'm not sure where your data sources or how they're configured. It's not something that you have to necessarily do on the Elasticsearch side. I think it's been a while since I've done Elasticsearch administration, like years actually. So my information is dated, but I think that still you can have, sensible policies on the writing side that is able to create new indexes, in a pretty regular cadence, It depends.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that might be something that's already being applied since we only have the hot tier in the legacy cluster. So I'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, my experience at least, unfortunately, I don't have any access to the ILM policies that I had written, but it's been a while and it is hard to find good examples. So I'll agree with that. For what it's worth, I found that if you're going to use something like a curator approach as well, you can try that. I think that gives you a little bit more control. I ended up just using ILM policies for developer stuff that we didn't worry about when things rotated and when indexes moved around, but for bigger things where it might put a lot of load on stuff, I think it was nicer to have a Lambda that would run effectively a series of simple, almost curator-esque rules. But that's the only other thing I could say right now. I'll try to see if I can fish out some of the ILMs that I used as reference though, and throw them on the Slack if I find any.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, so those are the questions I've lined up. Do not see any questions yet in the Zoom chat. And let's see, in Slack, do we have any questions there? Nope, just that one. So yeah, it's open mic. Any questions, announcements, other interesting topics to discuss today?
I had a question.
Go for it.
It was a kind of a procedural question, not a technical question, but I was wondering if there's a opportunity to create a Slack channel for talking about AI. I don't think we have one for that, unless I'm mistaken.
We don't. I'm never opposed to creating the channels. I just it's kind of like when you launch a new community on Stack Exchange, whatever. You got to have enough sponsors and enough people actively interested to participate in it so that it has a life on its own. So, you know, a lot of times I create these channels and they just fizzle out very quickly unless there's a lot of conversation. Instead, I wish one could tag messages or something inside of a channel. So one could like filter out conversations, but unfortunately that's not supported.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I don't think right now, like there's a large AI scope for DevOps and whatnot. I think the conversation's been around for a while, and like tools really haven't gained traction. The only one that I can think of is a company called PromptOps, who's attempting to create a kind of a chat ops powered by a conversational AI. They have a demo up. I'm not sure they're out of pre-alpha at this point. It's still very early days, but I think that as time progresses, we'll see more and more stuff like this. I think it'd be great to have a channel to talk about those things.
But I think the AI DevOps, the best AI DevOps is the one that you don't see, kind of like Datadog's being able to find anomalies in, you know, typical traffic patterns and stuff like that. I still consider that kind of AI-ish, right? So if there's something that's looking at your service and it's ingesting all of the metrics so it can build, you know, this, it's not a large language model, right? But it's like a large operating model of what your system looks like, and kind of knows like, hey, this is regular. And then if some spike or something happens, then you'll get the alert that way.
Sure. One of the things I've really been impressed by is how good GPT-4 is at reading your Python code and documenting it for you.
Good pro tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had tremendous success on 4.0 over 3.5 and 3.0 for ChatGPT. It's so much more natural.
Yeah, they definitely did a good job at improving the language model.
All right. Other questions, announcements, observations?
I had one other thing that we've been running into. We use AWS image builder pipelines to build out a few golden images. I don't totally agree with golden images, but that's kind of besides the point. when we go to create components, we have a homespun module that we use to manage the versions. So essentially, like every time you release a new component, depending on what's been changed, it'll either update the patch or the major or minor version. I think it's just the way with our module that's written that way, where like if there's an error in the component, it loads a hash into the state, and then even if you fix the error, it's still trying to create this erroneous component, which forces us to either modify the state or destroy the pipeline and recreate it, which obviously isn't a huge deal for Terraform. But I was just wondering, do you guys have a semantic versioning module that you guys distribute or support?
Question for Cloud Posse?
Yeah, just like around detecting changes in files and increasing the semantic version.
Okay. I'll answer a little bit on that, but first I can't keep all the conversations straight. Somebody was recently asking about SEM versioning strategies in our sweetops Slack. That wasn't you by any chance? Like
no, it wasn't.
So we have a more simplistic approach at it. I think it works and it's scalable across lots of different types of projects. An example would be like inside of Geodesic, if you go into GitHub and workflows. We use something called Release Drafter. Are you familiar with that already?
No.
Okay, so it's a GitHub action that's very powerful, like a pretty robust configuration file and options. What we do is we take a label-based approach. So based on the labels of a PR that determines whether it's patch major or minor, and it's totally configurable what should be what. What I like about it is you can configure if something's going to be a pre-release or automatically release. And also what I like about it is that it's based on labels. So it's not like magic. It's not mysterious. Now, to do what you want to do, based on like the types of files that changed or other changes, that's where it gets interesting. I mean, since this is release drafters based on labels, I like the fact that you could then automatically set or suggest labels based on the changes in a pull request. But beyond that, I'm not gonna speculate.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a look. Yeah, this is for specifically the versioning of the component that's used in the image recipe. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd considered
You're
referencing
saying,
the git tag.
yeah, I see what you're saying. How do you so updating like a manifest with other SEM version? Isn't that a case for Renovate then?
I'm not familiar with Renovate.
Oh, so we were talking at the start of the call, the Rennovatebot.
Oh, right. Okay.
Which allows you then to have custom Renovate rules that could be just on a regex, and that could help you. And those regexes, I believe, can be on semantic versions. So then you can set some kind of a policy to update.
Okay, great. I'll take a look at that closer. Thank you.
Anyone else have other suggestions? All right. Other questions?
I just wanted to bring up what Oscar mentioned in the text chat, that if you're looking at ways to automate training your own LLM, or even just to enhance GPT itself, I've been poking Llama Index. I linked it into the chat. I have no idea how good it is, but it does seem like it's making a bit of waves. So you could certainly look at that if you wanted to say, I have a repo and I would like to, use, I need a way to tell a language model that these files have changed, so forget this content or other things like that. That's just my fundamental understanding of it, though. I haven't actually dug into what it can and can't do too hard. I don't know if anybody else has.
I can say, I'm so excited for the day when I can kind of like just point it and train on like our Slack team, ingest our Slack team conversations, ingest our GitHub, ingest our documentation, and then really interact with the content we produce relative to our domain. That would be phenomenal. Let's see. So Oscar was saying privacy is a big issue with GPT-4 based on ChatGPT, OpenAI API in general. There even was a big security breach recently where this could haunt lots of people, orgs using this in a professional manner already. I was wondering if anyone was looking into self-baked models. Okay, so that was the question leading up to Jeremy's response, which was this project here by Jerry.
I'm kind of looking into this space a little bit, not to speak against the privacy part, but when it comes to this, what Llama Index seems to be doing, it appears to me like the hardest part about using an LLM like GPT is the token limits. You can, if you have a small doc of under like 4,000 tokens, and a token is roughly equivalent to, you know, words and subwords. So like, you know, a 10-word sentence might have like anywhere from 10 to 20 tokens in it. But you can talk to something like a GPT with a memory or a running window of about 4,000 tokens. The newer GPT-4 has anywhere from 8,000 to 32,000 tokens that you can have this running conversation window. The question comes when you have complex data that you want to reference and talk about, like say a book or a Git repo, or, you know, like a major project, right? Like a monolithic code base with, you know, millions of lines of code. You're not able to maintain that context inside of the language, the language model for your query response. So the tools that what seems like Llama Index is trying to address here is, it seems to be a common thread of things that people are trying to address, and I'm also learning about myself as I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. And the problem is, what strategies do you use to address a large corpus of data to produce a response, right? But keeping in mind that you have this window that you have to manage here.
You really don't know what's sliding out of that window, which haunts me every now and then too, and leads to incorrect answers when it forgets about things I had just been talking about.
Exactly. That's why you notice you have a long conversation with ChatGPT, it gets weird with the long yeah. That's the context dropping out of that window. That's what's happening there. As far as the privacy goes, you know, yeah, there's definitely models that you can run locally. There's you can look at Alpaca. Alpaca, and what Stanford did was interesting. If you don't know about this, Stanford was able to train a small Facebook model to be roughly equivalent to GPT-3 by asking GPT-3 to help it train this small model. And so you're able to get similar responses and run it locally because it's much smaller. If you want to run GPT-4, you need terabytes of GPU RAM.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what's ruining it for me a little bit. Like, I would have been a whole lot more excited about these other alternatives. But then now having used GPT-4 and use that on a regular basis, and how remarkably improved those results are, at least for my business context, the way I use them. I couldn't go back to something that's at 3 or 3.5. And therefore I'm not interested in a lot of these other alternatives.
Well, I would kind of push back on that a little bit, because GPT-4 showed us what we can do with a lot of data, but they did it kind of in a very inefficient sort of way, because the entire corpus of data in that vector space, you're not touching most of it, right? 99% of it when you talk to it in any given conversation. When you have a narrowly defined kind of AI, that is operating in your space and you have kind of a generic good enough language model and good enough data context, you can have remarkably sophisticated conversations, and even more so because you're not convoluting that neural network with foreign ideas.
I got you. No, makes sense.
Yeah, so I think
Actually, this would be an awesome extension for like Algolia to do in their search, something like that. You know, your corpus of data documentation, very narrowly scoped, and throw a little bit of.
They're already working on that, I believe.
There.
there's lots of companies working on this. This is I think the next.
No,
step
this is the next
away.
wave. Yeah, this is the next gold rush.
Yeah, exactly. This is absolutely the next gold rush, getting your data into this generic AI language models that are able to then interpret that data and do interesting things with that data. Yeah, that's the next thing.
All right. Well, we made it to the top of the hour, or not the top of the hour, but we made it to the end of our hour. Thanks everyone for participating in the office hour session today. We're going to be posting a recording of today's session to our YouTube channel. I think I forgot to announce what that was earlier. That's at youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. Please subscribe if you enjoy our content. We post a weekly newsletter. All these cool links and news that we share is sent out weekly in our newsletter. So please subscribe there if you want to get that. To register for our weekly office hours sessions, you can go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, cloudposse.com/office hours. You can also connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'm available there and accept all of the connections. Go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. And if you are curious about Cloud Posse and what we do and how we can transform your organization with Terraform and the blueprints we offer, book a session with me directly. Just answer a few quick questions. Go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and talk to you next week. Same time, same place.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.